Sure.
Good.
It's going.
Oh.
The stream is going, but I'm leaving the audio. Why not? Why not, I say?
We're
Pop
good.
out.
I'm doing the things.
Oh, no. Where did that go? Crap.
Are you sure that we're recording? Oh my God, yes we are. There we go. Much better.
Okay. Okay, we should be live. So,
Yeah, we are in fact live. You might want to switch it. Stay tuned to something
here we are,
else.
everyone. Hello, welcome to another episode of Random Respawn, where we talk about gaming news, gaming things, gaming stuff. I'm Joshua Raptor. Over there, taking a swig of probably vodka, is Grand Marshal. And,
I'm a huge alcoholic. Yes.
And over there is Caleb Bite with the new haircut. And Wallace, what's up, man? How you doing? Oh man,
How you doing,
it's so
Wallace?
good to see you. It's so good to see you.
Very good.
So on today's episode, we will be talking about blockchains and their potential in video games, which is kind of a theme that we do. Is we talk a lot about we have what if themed episodes where we speculate on a lot of things, but we don't actually know the answers, and we have to wait and see what actually happens.
What if thousands of people watched our podcast?
that is also another.
That is the most perplexing of what ifs.
That's right.
Yes. That's very true. But
So,
anywho.
I'll go ahead and start off by describing what a blockchain is as I finish this Reese's peanut butter cup that I'm eating.
Oh, very nice. Yes.
Because Marshall doesn't know anything. And so,
Not a clue. You guys were like, "Hey, we want to talk about blockchains," and I'm like, "The fuck's a blockchain?"
Yeah, he thought it was a Lego apparatus.
I thought it was some sort of like gaming.
That was the game. Yeah, like a what is
thing,
Red
like-
Rover?
Wasn't there a
Red Rover,
TI
Red Rover.
83 game called Block Dude or something like that we all used to play in math class?
Oh no, I never did. I played Snake usually on my calculator.
Snick.
Snick, yeah.
Snicko. Sorry.
I think I had a TA with like a bootleg Mario kind of thing.
Yeah, that was
Oh
definitely one of
yeah,
them,
that's
too.
right. They had
Yeah.
something like that. But anywho, what exactly is a blockchain?
So
Because I honestly have no idea. And you guys were like, "This is going to be the future." I'm like,
It is,
what?
yes.
It's the future.
the one future. So I am going to do my best to explain it in a very simple layman or women's term. And so
And I'm going to ruin everything by asking questions along the way, probably. But continue. Yes,
per usual. So
per usual.
for those that don't know, Bitcoin is a type of blockchain, and blockchains can basically be used for anything that you want. And right now, they're kind of used just for currency. And the best way to describe a blockchain is that it is completely decentralized. So there's not one point of action. So whereas technically, let's say if you have a bank account, all your money is inside one bank. And so if they're able to breach that one gatekeeper and get into your bank, they technically have access to all of your funds. Whereas a blockchain gets rid of that single point of access and basically says every computer that is quote unquote mining or is part of this network has to be, they all share each other's information with each other. So you no longer have the single bank, you basically have every single person on this entire network. So go ahead.
Quick question to interject. Is this kind of like a DRM type of thing where it checks for as well for any, like hypothetically, if everyone is connected to this thing, then I'm assuming then that it checks if it's a legal copy and all that stuff.
So yes,
In a sense, yes.
They
Ownership is verified.
Yes. So basically, if you make if you do a transaction on it, it verifies that it's a true transaction, and then basically permanently makes that transaction part of the chain, which is the chain part of blockchain, and then it copies that to every single person who's running or who is mining on that chain. So basically, if someone tried to come in and hack, they would have to simultaneously hack all the thousands and millions of computers at the exact same time. And technically, that is possible, which is why there is a purposefully implemented block of time that transactions cannot take place, and that's every 2 minutes. So basically, if you were to try and hack every single computer at the exact same time, you would be timed out because you'd have to wait 2 minutes before you could actually do another transaction. And so that's one of the ways that they keep it secure. But there is a permanent ledger So the second you make a transaction, it is hardcore. It is hard coded into the chain, and it can never be changed because if
Hardcore,
something
hard-coded.
happens, yeah, it is hard. It is hardcore.
It's hardcore.
It's
hard-coded.
hardcore, parkour, hard coded into the chain. And there's no way to jump or do flips around it because if something changes, it verifies it to the thousands and millions of other computers on the network and it's like, oh, this is wrong. Forget this one. This is just this. They purposely were trying to mess it up. And so that was Bitcoin. It was very early blockchain, and even the current version of Bitcoin that's still a blockchain has changed a lot throughout the time that it's been alive. But then since then, other blockchains have come out like Ethereum or Ethereum. It's called Ethereum that has a thing called smart contracts built into it, which means that you can have code that is part of the blockchain. So if something were to happen, an action is taken place, and that is permanently part of that blockchain. So if you kind of mess up something and it's not caught right away, it is forever part of that thing. And then later on, you may have to branch apart from what you originally created and make like a more sophisticated and better version, which has also happened. So that's kind of blockchains in general. It is a huge decentralized way to store information across a bunch of computers. And with smart contracts and things like that, you can set it up so that way payments are dished out or credit is given. And so let's say, okay, so here's a really good thing is let's say I made a amazing and the greatest meme of all time. Actually, we'll take the beard sneeze. When I did the beard sneeze way back when.
Yes.
For those of you, if you guys search beard sneeze in Google Images and look up the GIFs or GIFs, depending on if you're crazy.
It's a GIF, you fool.
It's a GIF. You'll see
Just no.
me sneezing and a beard magically growing. And so
Yep,
that
you're
was
still there.
That was my claim to fame. And so that picture has been stolen from me and posted on so many sites that I cannot keep track of it.
Of course.
In a blockchain environment, basically that picture would be hard coded into the chain. So you would know that I was the first person to post it. And if anyone were to take it down and post it somewhere else, you could literally follow it back to the point of where it was first created.
Mm-hmm.
And so with something like that,
Interesting.
right. So if all of a sudden, somebody has $1 trillion in their bank account or they have 1 trillion tokens of Bitcoin, you can trace back to see where and how they got it. And so if something doesn't add up, you've got thousands and millions of computers always fact checking each other. And so it is there's nothing that's impossible, but it is insanely super duper difficult because you'd have to have some sort of insane mass attack. And also, let's say if you were to cut off power to half the world, you would have the other half that was still on and still mining Bitcoins and still making sure all the ledgers were correct. And because it's decentralized, there are no international transaction fees. It's just a digital thing. And so, especially when it comes to money, you don't have to pay currency rates or anything like that. It's just a different type of thing with which you can pay things with. And so, a lot of the blockchain.
There's no third party involved.
Right, there's no third party involved. So right now it's mostly been like talked about or used for types of currency, but the way and implications that the blockchain was actually created is way more complex. And there's a lot of things that were like, if there was so since it's decentralized, not one person has all of this data. So there is a way with like smart contracts and things like that to like, let's say, put in all of your health information. And so no matter which doctor you went to, as long as they were a qualified doctor, you could basically give them like, hey, here is my personal key. They could then find you and see all of the things that were wrong with you and then add things to your health records. And that is a permanently following thing with you. So that way, instead of having to go to a new doctor and then wait for the old doctor to send new information to the new doctor and then keep getting the same blood test over and over again because they're like, oh, we don't have all your stuff and stuff like that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Could this be another way for criminals to use identity theft? Like, could they possibly steal essentially your key, basically?
if they stole your key and started using it, you could track it. Everything that's ever done on the chain is instantly tracked. And it's not even just like it's temporary tracked, it is hard coded into the chain forever. You cannot go back and change anything that's happened. And so, one of the things about like, especially with BitTorrent, is that it's totally anonymous, but everyone has a special number or something like that that represents who they are. It's kind of like a screen name or social security number, but an insanely long, like 32-digit number that no one else,
Of course,
really knows.
Yeah.
And so you can see how much these numbers have, but unless you were like, hey, this is who I am, nobody actually knows who or what you are. So it's all out in the open, but at the same time, it's totally private unless you make it not private.
Okay.
So that is kind of like blockchains in a kind of really boring and hard to watch way to start off a video game podcast. But our topic is blockchains and how they could possibly be used inside of video games or any type of anything. And with Ethereum and their smart contracts, there's basically any way. I'm a celestial body.
You are in fact a celestial body.
So-
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. And so there's almost an unlimited way that these could be used inside gamings. And especially, I mean, as Caleb will probably bring up, games as a service, this is the best way for them to do it.
Right. And also it's another avenue for indie developers to use platforms outside of Steam or GOG, or any other major store that they have to use right now to be able to publicize and sell games. And these platforms, that's a third party that they're using, so they take a huge cut of the revenue. They have varying compensation models, sometimes can lock up the earnings that indie devs get from sales up to 60 days before giving them. Whereas if they use something that is in blockchain technology, they can use a platform that has a living and transparent economy. That's a transaction system outside of any third party that consumers can use to contribute directly to the game developers, and they can get that immediately, and even be able to offer, like, if you're using it for the currency base, you can even then offer like game tokens or whatever back to the consumer, so you can have this like back and forth even of the currency, and not be the way that it is right now with just going through Steam or other platforms. Because you can transfer everything that's used. Like if you use a game token, that would go directly into the developer, and transfer fees are very minimal, and then the developers can give you incentives as a gamer by giving you coupons or rewards within that same currency system. And so it's like a direct relationship for developers and the gamers. It's really good for indie or smaller companies.
Interesting.
It's
I was about to say, oh, sorry to cut you off, but I was about to say, it sounds like this is a lot more for like indies and like kind of setting things up, like for major companies or self-publishing groups, like for instance, like Digital Extremes who do Warframe. Like I don't think they would necessarily need to switch over to blockchains simply because everything they do for Warframe that's going directly to them. There's no third party, there's nothing. When you buy premium currency in that game, that is going directly to their accounts.
Yes,
but that is it.
And I know that with Warframe, like some of the stuff that they have for sale, or the paid things maybe aren't tradable or whatever. But
not every single thing is tradable in the game, but there's most of the important stuff is
blockchain technology in the fraud prevention and being able to verify items, verify ownership of things, so that when you've got things like the auction house in WoW, and you've got all these like duplicates or scams or fraud things, like that doesn't exist in a blockchain environment.
There are problems sometimes that arise with Warframe, especially with like things like chargebacks, when with currency, and then when someone gets currency from that person who did a chargeback, like then that's on that other person's account. It's like we have to get that we have to get that platinum back. Like I've heard some bad horror stories when it comes to stuff like that. So like,
So here's
would that stop chargebacks, things like that?
chargebacks.
Because
Probably.
I was about to say, because it sounds like this is kind of like a weird PayPal where it's like you're putting money into this that you will have, then you can then just move that money wherever you want. Does that make sense?
Is pretty similar. So you were saying, like,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, like especially with GOG and Origin, which is EA's thing, that all of us forgot that was what it was called. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So
and you play, you know, all
Uplay.
those, you know, and Bethesda's thing, which yes, Bethesda has their own thing. God
right.
forbid.
So
Yeah.
so the actual technology behind creating a blockchain is totally open source. That is open source. Whether or not a company takes that and makes it private is their own doing. But if a company other than Valve or whatever were to set up a type of blockchain that is just for gamers and to sell video games on, since that money is going directly to the publisher, there's almost no downside for EA or Steam to jump onto that and have their games distributed through this blockchain, because they're not losing any money. The money's going directly to them, and then they also don't have to maintain servers and everything like that.
Yeah, it would then be a question of how to be able to transition everything over from one thing, because you know, God knows what the absolute horror that is coding for Steam itself and how that would work and all that jazz.
Right. So it's not. So that's also. So it actually it incentivizes a company like Steam and GOG to not do a blockchain thing because they get a cut from developers who host through their platform.
Exactly.
But EA, who is only hosting their games,
They don't just host their games, though.
Right, no,
Sometimes you'll actually, which gets really funny when you have another publisher hosting their games on another publisher's thing, that it's like, oh, you buy like an Assassin's Creed game through Origins, but then you still have to download and install the Uplay in order to play it if you're gonna get it on PC. It gets really dumb.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there are some incentives for like for them to still be a gatekeeper. So it would start with the indie games, and then if all of that was pulled off of like Steam and whatever, and so Steam wasn't making any profit at all off of hosting or having these servers to distribute these third-party games, they would eventually switch over too. But the thing about like the smart contracts is that everything can be done through them. So you could actually have it set up so that way you can have trials of games, and basically you play, and as you're playing, it keeps track of how long you've played and then charges you for that time that you've played. So if you just wanted to basically do a GameFly, but instead of having to pay a full $60 for a game or pay a monthly membership or anything like that, right, or a month, you could just play, get into the menu screen of Friday the 13th, realize that this sucked, and instantly just stop playing it and then not be charged anymore.
Here's the thing, though. Because of that, you might be actually screwing over a lot of indie devs who are making very short games. And once people will try it out, and it's like, oh wait, I already beat it.
This is an option, and it's not necessarily something that like the small, like you wouldn't do that if your game is a single player,
if it's a short game,
one time through short game. You would still be able to use some kind of blockchain platform, or if there was an indie platform, like indie dev platform, using blockchain for just the currency transactions to prevent having to use Steam and to have Steam, Valve taking the cut out of that. But you wouldn't have a like pay for time spent kind of model in a game like that. This is more for your
for like
MMOs
maybe like an early access type
of
thing, or
or even just like the game, games as a service. So you've got your games that would normally charge a subscription fee, instead of having that come in increments of monthly or whatever, you would literally pay for whatever time you're spending in the game. Something like that.
And with cloud computing, it's easier now than ever to instantly scale anything that you need, whereas way back when it's like you always had to just assume whoever owned the game was going to be playing. Now it's like, oh, more people are playing, we'll just go ahead and so that's also another thing. It's like a lot of people have uninstalled WoW because they're like, oh, I'd love to play like maybe once or twice a month, but I don't want to pay $15 a month. And so it's like, oh, you could just pay as you play. I mean, that's just one of the
Just
insane
one example. Yeah.
Yeah.
unlimited options. And then,
Um,
oh, go ahead. Yeah, you finish.
I was, yeah. I'm continuing on this, but shifting a little bit. So if you've got another point to make on that, you can keep going.
Oh yeah. Oh, I thought you were that was kind of like a weird way to like trail out.
No, I was.
It's and because
super awkward. Okay.
and because of the chain is a permanent ledger. If you bought a game, it is hard coded into the chain, and so you can. And this goes both ways for the dev. So basically, if you were the first person to make this type of game, if somebody tried to steal it or sell it off as something else and then upload it, it's you as the developer, your developing team, and the game are literally hard coded and can be traced back to the point where it was actually created, and it is copied thousands and millions of times across all of the computers that are part of it. So it's one of those things like where you'd be like, oh, I never did that, and you're like, well, yep, you totally did, and it's right here, and that's also a good way to if a developer sucks, you can see that they have a history of sucking.
Yeah.
Right.
It would just then be a question, sorry to cut you off, Caleb,
Go
of
ahead.
if you want to go down this route and not use a third party like Steam or something like that, then you would just have to be worried of making sure you get out the message of, hey, here's my game, please play it. And
Yes.
I think for a lot of devs, especially the smaller devs, like being on the front page of Steam is a big deal, even just for the brief moment that they are. Like it may help a little bit. I actually don't know the statistics of how many more sales they get if they are on the front page or not. But yeah, I guess it just then turns into you just got to make sure you get your message out, marketing, and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that it doesn't solve that kind of distribution struggle or, like you said, marketing. But another thing that I wanted to bring up on the potential use of this kind of technology is with virtual economies within games. So
That's
this
awesome. Yes.
this is commonly in like MMOs, World of Warcraft or anything like that, where you have items that players can get and then trade or sell with other players within the game. And these are people are often open to fraud scams or anything like that. And as a gamer, you never truly own the assets that you have within that game. It's all owned by the company, by the developer on their servers. So any kind of attack or virus or anything that goes into that developer's environment or servers, it affects it can harm your assets, the things that you have earned in the game, and and like I said, open up to other WoW type gold stealing, fraud scams, whatever.
Of course.
But because of the way that the blockchain and that permanent ledger and the I want to make sure I get my term right that Josh has been using. Smart
no, I'm not
contracts.
gonna. Yeah, it's a
smart
very dry
contracts, the
podcast, as someone actually pointed out. But
Yes.
it's,
we were talking a lot about like really in-depth tech stuff.
Yeah,
so
and how it can be used for
nothing
games. So
nothing super nuts. Yeah.
right, it sucks because it's kind of like a boring and dry topic, but it has the implications.
Very
so
important
cool,
things
though.
are boring.
It's so cool. Yeah. The most important things are really boring.
It's
true.
just you got to do it.
Yeah.
So because they can verify, true ownership with this, and you don't have to rely on third-party brokers, it makes them much more resilient to fraud. And there's actually an example of a game. It's called Beyond the Void. And I don't know too terribly much about the game. I've only read about it in the context of blockchain. It uses the Ethereum.
Ethereum.
Ethereum. However,
Don't mind me. I'm
randomly
just gonna go
pronounce
look
it.
this up right now and see what it is.
It's an online strategy game, and it uses Ethereum blockchain for its in-game economy. Using smart contracts, and so it is able to create and register ownership of the assets on this blockchain. And this gives players full ownership of them, out of their assets outside the game. It's not controlled. It's not completely housed on the game servers, and so there's stability, there's prevention from frauds or hacks, and it allows them to freely buy, sell, or exchange those assets, um, regardless of what the company's doing or regardless of how the servers are doing. So like the stuff that you get in there can keep its value in a way, but value is determined by the economy. So it's not saying that you can like literally make money off of this game and turn that into cold hard cash, because it's, value is determined by who's out there to get to acquire it from you. But they're exploring ways like cross game assets even, on the blockchain, so you can even trade, or things that you've earned in one game could translate into something in another game. And it's just like crazy stuff that we've never even thought about before. Like I've never even thought about taking an Overwatch loot box and being able to translate that to something else in another game.
Yeah,
because that has value to somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's like,
in a way
that's what this kind of opens up.
Yeah, in a way, this almost just sounds like the Steam Marketplace, but like you're able to get an actual like value out of one thing instead of like a general estimated value that one on the marketplace, depending on if people are buy and selling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Buy low, sell high, and all that jazz.
Yeah,
But,
it's
yeah,
like
that's fascinating.
It's crazy. It's like it's the potential for like a real free market economy within the gaming industry. And so like I can play and spend hundreds of hours in Path of Exile and get a whole bunch of shit, and then not want to sell it for Path of Exile currency. I can go and then translate that to another game that has trading and get some stuff there to be able to play that. Like it's insane.
Here's
where you could potentially go with this.
Here's the problem though with that example. If you're taking the stuff that is worth something in this economy and then bringing it into another game, is the developer of the other game actually going to make any money off of that?
So if you were using games as a service, then you are paying to play the game regardless. So
okay,
I mean
but again, we're in an era right now where loot boxes are kind of a big deal still, and whether or not, more than likely, they're not going to go away.
No, they for sure.
But
won't.
they will. It seems like to me they're starting to trickle out. I think. Because of just how much backlash there's been.
A lot of heat.
Yeah.
But until then, we're still in that point. So it's like any publisher not making money off of that is like, ugh, or even developers who are trying to get on this action, who kind of are relying on loot boxes to keep going. Again, many games these days make more money off of their loot boxes and DLC type items than from the game itself. So it's right. Just a matter of once that gets out of the way, then maybe this can come in instead and take its place.
So yeah, it's well, I mean, if you wanted to take a step back, and so assets from one game don't go to another game, you could always basically have a universal wallet that would apply for all games. I mean, I guess technically that's cash right now, but I mean, instead of paying $10 into a Steam and not being able to buy loot boxes for Overwatch, that money could be used across all things if they're on the same blockchain, which would be great for consumers. And then also, since the value is kind of determined by everyone, game developers could adjust their prices basically instantly. So it's not like, and then there's no transaction fees, so they don't necessarily have to try and cover the credit card fee that's charged every single time. Hopefully, in theory, like these things will go down, and since it has no single country of origin, there won't be any, you don't have to worry about pricing in Australia versus pricing in, the US and Canada. It's just the same price for everyone. So that could also be easier.
It's truly insane to think about. Like this is, I mean, we are in like the very baby step stages of
we are on the edge of some serious shit.
But like it is really crazy how big of a change this type of technology could facilitate in the world of gaming. And hopefully it happened, like hopefully it is an explosive change and not like a slow slow start. But this is, I mean, this is huge because the gaming industry and like how we think about games and digital transactions and all of this stuff has continued to evolve, and online gaming and all of that, but there hasn't been like this big explosion in a while. You know, when online games first started getting popular, like that was a big shift in the gaming industry. We went from only tabletop games to then having games on the computer, and then we went to being able to play with other people, and then that exploded into these MMOs and all these other kinds of online communities and everything. That kind of exploded, and then from there we've just kind of been doing the same thing with small iterations on it. And we went from, oh, here's an expansion to my thing. Now we've got the DLC model and now the loot boxes. And there's all these been like big publisher nickel and diming kind of things with gaming, but there hasn't really been a big shift in how the industry works or how things, like just how it all works together, how it ticks. And this is a perfect opportunity for the gaming industry. It's just, it's incredible implications. CryptoKitties is one that you might have heard of.
And
Another
Dogecoin.
one. Dogecoin. Yeah, Dogecoin. CryptoKitties though, it's been in the news.
It is a game. Yeah, that's right. It's a game based off E3. I forgot. Yes.
Yeah, it's a game where you can collect trade,
the cats,
and breed
yes.
cats, and it uses smart contracts. And it provides this concept of proof of scarcity because it can verify, ownership, and there's only a finite number of kittens that can be created.
Oh, Jesus.
And every kitten is
I'm
different.
looking at it right now, and I already.
It's crazy.
Every cat is different, and that's it. It's literally every cat is different. So if you're like, I like the spots on that one, it's like, well, you have to trade it because we cannot create another one of that type.
Right.
Oh,
and
God.
the top selling cat was reported to be traded for $115,000.
Oh, stop it. But the thing is, here's the thing though. Can that person get that money back out and actually be like, I can spend this $115,000?
Yes.
Or is it okay if that changes
you can
things then.
yes. There are a lot of third-party sites that kind of do that. So technically you could meet someone off of Craigslist, they give you a bunch of cash and you transfer your assets to them. But a lot of people use intermediate companies, like Coinbase is one of them. But yeah, you could technically Venmo your friend and then give him shares of, Ethereum or Litecoin that you have. So there are ways to
would be ways to
real
turn
money.
that into actual money. And so like that's part of where there's a whole lot that has to be figured out to keep consumers safe and all these other things, like being able to take it's difficult for developers. It would be impossible for me to even think about how do you build a game and use this kind of technology in a way that isn't going to be used maliciously to like farm my game for real world cash, and then it ends up paying the player ends up making more than the developer did on the game. Something there's, how do you overcome these kinds of obstacles that we've never even had to think about before?
So
crazy.
When you were talking about making it real world money, the thing is, like, to me, what is real world money? I don't deal with cash ever anymore. It's like
actual cold hard cash.
Yeah, it's like that money is direct deposited. My friend is like, hey, I paid for your lunch. And I'm like, let me Venmo you the number 10. And you magically are 10 something richer.
However, even though you say Venmo the number 10, it's still $10 of, actual United States currency. The idea, we still have currency again with Bitcoin. This changes everything, and where that's going to go. I can totally see in the future we will literally just turn everything into like actual but currency that is not something that is holding.
Even
you were able to hold, whatever.
Right now, the U.S. dollar isn't based off the gold standard. It is just the dollar. So it's like, how's that? Like, we've like, all right, the dollar's worth this amount, and everyone's all right, we agree.
That opens up a different can of worms.
But so that's kind of like the thing with CryptoKitty and with Bitcoin is it'll get to the point where companies will just allow you to pay with this currency, and it's whatever amount that they deem is the amount at that time. And so it's like to me, that's kind of how money's already going in that way. It's
Yeah.
just it's
Yeah.
it's all digital. I pay with a plastic card. Then I log into my bank account and move numbers from my bank account over to the plastic card, and they say that I'm okay and that I'm not going to be arrested or have my assets seized. It's like, to me, it's like it doesn't there doesn't need to be anything anymore. And it's like, this just seems like the next step, and it absolutely is. But I mean, until it's regulated and people feel like there's some sort of safety
Right.
behind it,
Yes, that is the key right there.
yeah,
Right. I mean, but
that's
there's
absolutely the key. I mean,
and along that same line, I mean, there's so much money that can be saved from switching to switching from the plastic card, credit cards, and all the charges of that companies incur from that, and using cryptocurrencies in a decentralized platform. I mean, there's huge amounts of savings that can happen there. I mean, the economic implications for real world outside of even the video game, there's a lot. There's a lot to
Yeah,
consider.
there's a lot. Very much so.
yeah, and I mean, even for like realtors, like, I mean, with the permanent ledger, that's such a huge thing. And actually, in the music industry, I know that there's actually a lot of talk about companies trying to figure out a way to have a music specific blockchain where the artist is hard coded into the chain. Because right now, if you were to get an MP3, you could view the metadata and then just change it. There's no permanent way to have your name attached to a file. And the
Yeah.
fact that like this file is 20 years old, it needs to change. And so and that's also another thing is with smart contracts, if you were like, hey, I want to use this song from, I don't know, we'll say Weird Al Yankovic. We're like, hey, Weird Al,
Mhm.
I want to use this song in a video that I'm doing, and I only have $10, but you meet certain smart contract requirements. So, you're like, it's just like a school project. It's something else that you fill out. It could instantly give you that song for $10. Whereas right now, if you were to go to the publishing company, for them to even look at anything and get their lawyers to approve it and then send it to Weird Al or anything like this,
yeah.
they won't even look at anything that's like below 10 grand. You know what I mean? If they're like, oh,
Of course.
even if it's for something super small in like half a second, they're like, oh, we don't see that it's not worth our time to even open this email, and they just delete it. Whereas with smart contracts, you can set parameters that would allow, and then so that's also another thing is it's better to have a lot of a little something than it's better to have a lot of a little something than a large amount of nothing, or something like that. I think I said that wrong. Let me think of how to say this. So
A lot of a little something than a little of something
lot.
big.
yeah, it's better to have
Yeah.
um
A lot of little things than one big thing.
than one nothing. No, like a big nothing. It's better to have
Nothing.
right, a big nothing. So it's
It's a
like
weird metaphor, but okay.
but
Let's,
so
let's
that's
keep going with
that's
it.
like, think of how much money has that these artists haven't gotten because a
Right.
record company who owns the rights to that song were like, oh,
Gave
forget
him a
it.
crappy contract.
Well, yeah, it gave him a crappy contract, or it was like, I'm not even gonna see this. This isn't worth my time as a record company to even inform the artist, and they're making decisions on their behalf. Whereas if this was implemented, the artist could set up all of this information, and then once when those things were kind of met, they would then automatically go to someone. So it's like they're like, oh, I'm constantly getting 10, 15, $40 because these things are automatically implemented, and they're going directly to the artist.
But now you're going down a very interesting path where very powerful companies and very powerful people are suddenly going to lose a lot of power, and they probably don't want that to happen. So then we're going to go down that path of, oh God, what's the point of all these giant big record companies then? Because I have all this power to do this with my music. And then they all disappear. And I mean, there could be a huge undertaking of, again, we're going down the route of government and all that, and lobbying and all that stuff, and how it's the worst thing in the world. And
Right.
again, that'll be baby steps.
All of this
Very
is
much so.
decentralized. It's all open source. And I mean, look at Chance the Rapper. I mean, he didn't have an artist. Macklemore didn't have a label for a long time. He's an independent artist. So it's like,
Of
especially with
course.
Spotify and the internet, it's way easier now to get your name out there than it used to be. And so there are gatekeepers. The artists make the most money when they're played on the radio, despite still having all of the technology and instant streaming stuff we have now.
Of course.
But it's one of those things like where, an artist may do both and then just see a lot more income on one of the, and that also goes to streaming. Whereas like, Spotify, for some reason, every artist and label complains about Spotify not getting paid enough. but Spotify literally loses money year over year trying to pay these people out, and they're like, Spotify's
Makes
not
sense.
giving us enough money, and they're like we're losing money trying to keep this afloat. So it's not even that's the like clearly
Yeah.
the money's going somewhere and it's not getting to the artist. I think the record label has something to do with it, as they always do. But
Yeah.
that's when, I mean,
course.
even with Spotify, if they were to play a song, that money could go directly to the artist as opposed to going to some record company and then doing all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
let me get this back on gaming a little bit
Oh,
more,
yeah,
but
yeah.
also let's think about. So we've talked about like in-game assets and some of the implications there with blockchain. Now think about it. Think about it like this. Picture your Steam library. How many games do you have in your Steam library?
Please don't
A
ask me that
lot.
question.
A lot.
It's
lot
over-
of
it's
games.
over
in
seven.
your
How many?
Steam library.
How many
Like,
do you want to know?
it's over 70. So I don't really care about the number, but just visualize
Tell you
that
the
for a
number if
second.
I
Just
can
think
find
about all the games that you have in your Steam library. Now think about all of the games that you are likely to not play ever again, or maybe even for the first time, because there's a lot of those that I have too. You bought it in a
Yeah.
bundle
Mirage,
on sale or something, and you
Arcane
just
Magic.
459 games.
never bought
I have
never bought that.
459 games in my
That is
library.
insane.
I hate
So-
myself.
So with Steam and with any kind of other traditional game purchasing platform that we have now, or physical CDs, there's no way to get that money back.
Of course.
Like whatever you spent on that it's spent, there's no resale value. But what if there was? What if you had a way to resell those games to then buy other games
who are you reselling to?
in this kind of environment? And so look up Robot Cash. Robot and then cash, like
Robot
computer
Cash.
cache, like internet cache,
Oh.
CACHE.
Cachet.
Cache, Robot Cache.
Oh.
This is an up and coming platform to compete with Steam, and so it is kind of that third party that we've been talking about, but it's using this blockchain technology rather than credit card and actual currency. It's creating a fake currency, a a digital currency that will allow publishers to set a price and a resale price, and then using this universal platform currency, you could pay for your game, play it. When you're done with it, resell it, and use that to buy something else.
Quick question. For the resale, does the developer of the game get a slight whatchamacallit for it?
They could. You
I
could
don't-
absolutely.
was about to
I
say-
don't know. I don't know what the terms are because they haven't launched, and they'll have the Robot Cash will.
They
will be
would
setting
have
them.
they
They'll
would have to
they'll
get a
have
portion
something.
of it, because
Yeah.
there's no way that they would be like, yeah, sure, we'll put it on a platform that we might never ever get a lot of money for.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
no, there has to be terms that make the developers want to use it, but
course.
and publishers also. But I don't know the details of that. They haven't made all of that available, but that's just like that's a crazy thought. Like the
Yeah,
used game
that's
industry was
huge.
horrible. The GameStop like destroyed developers with the used game
with used games right here. If this actually goes through, this kills GameStop, full stop, completely. Because
Exactly.
that's like literally one of the only things that's keeping them afloat. That, and they're basically turning into Hot Topic with the amount of crap that's in their stores.
Oh yeah,
No
it's
joke.
just all yeah. So I mean, that's also another thing. It's with the blockchain, with the robot cache. Let's say that you like had the game and then you sold it, and then you tried to sell it again because you like copied it or something like that. You can view that. You can follow the ledger back and see like, oh, they only bought it one time. We've got the transaction where they bought it. They cannot sell it more than once. And so it would automatically be checked. And so it's also another thing is like, since the ledger is permanent and you have it on your computer, when you transfer that ledger to someone else, it is a final, it's a final thing. There's no way that you can be like, oh, I forgot my password. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it is now, you've transferred that. It is now the property of someone else, and you cannot get it back unless they transfer it back to you. And so that would also stop. I mean, especially I mean, you can still buy discs from like, for the PS4 and stuff like that. And you can buy cartridges for the Switch technically, and you can sell those on eBay and the developer doesn't get anything. So, I mean, I've even in a world like today, if they're like, hey, we can either make this and then if someone trades your game, you'd get 5 cents, or we can do this other thing where you don't see anything, they would almost always be like, oh no, I'd rather get a lot of money rather than no money at all. But it's like, that doesn't make any sense. If you're getting something out of the game being traded, it's like you should just be happy about it. So it's one of those things too. Psychology.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like even if you just had, so like with Sony, I mean, I rarely buy physical discs anymore. I do buy some because I like having game cases. I really like cases.
Yeah, it's like having vinyl.
I do. But even if you were able to buy Sony games on the PSN store, and then you could only use that money to buy other Sony games or whatever, like when you return something to a department store and you get gift card, like, okay, that's fine. I don't want this particular thing anymore. I don't care if I'm limited in what I can buy with that. I just don't want this anymore. I want something else. And so that being able to take that on an even larger scale, like Robot Cache is
It's still pronounced cash.
it is still
It is.
pronounced
Yeah,
cache.
I know.
But you don't want to.
It's something really, really interesting to watch and to see how this plays out. And because this is the other side of like implication in the gaming industry that is extremely exciting to me. And I mean, it could literally change the face of everything that we know about buying and playing games. And someone like me who doesn't get a whole lot of time to fully enjoy lots of different games, I mostly just pick one and play it for a while and then go and find something else and play it for a while. I could be able to experience more games because I could play it for some and either pay for the time I've spent playing it or have a set value for the game when I want to trade it in for something else. So I would still lose some money, because you're not going to be able to trade the full value of the game. Like if we just using dollars, if I pay $60 for a game, I'm not going to be able to take that full $60 back when I trade it and go somewhere else, but I might get 20 that I could go and put in something else. So it would ease that opportunity cost of switching to another game for me by a lot.
Yeah. That definitely will add more cash in the long run to developers, especially if you have, for your case in that instance, where you would want then to spend more money on more games because you actually have more cash back at least from that. So
Yeah,
I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it just I mean, I look at my Steam library and it's like if I could just I would even take, 15% of this value. You know what I mean? And and use
a
it
fraction of that,
right,
and use that to buy other things.
Right, and use that for more cars keys from Rocket League. You know what I mean? It's like
if the freaking crates would drop.
I would do that.
Exactly.
I would open up my Steam library right now, but it would definitely show up on OBS, and then you guys would all see my Steam, which isn't a big deal. I just don't want to make it look all janky, which is something that I do.
Well, you don't want us to see your puny library of no games.
No, I definitely have.
I just want that to cover our beautiful faces.
Right, that's the truth. But yeah, I mean, it's like,
But yeah, I would too. I would totally delete 90% of my Steam library and take a 10% return.
Oh, absolutely,
in
a heartbeat.
And just to do anything with it, anything else with it. Like,
please just let me do anything.
Please,
please, just. I'm tired of accidentally clicking install when I meant to install the other thing.
There are a few games that are on this list of my library, and I'm like, oh, why did I buy that?
I mean, there are games that we've purchased that are no longer in development, like Dungeon Land. They just it's just gone, and it's like, well. Died. I can't do anything with it. I literally cannot do anything with this. It's going to get to a point.
But the thing is, no one's going to want to buy that game because if that game has been abandoned and all that, then that game is essentially not worth anything anymore.
Well, here's the thing.
That might still happen.
That might still happen, but it's like,
of course, that might still happen.
Yeah. There is if there's something out there that someone wants, they will pay for it. You know what I mean? And so with a blockchain, when it's totally decentralized and people kind of make up the values for what things are kind of worth. Yes, developers, you can put in restrictions, which are what smart contracts do and things like that. But I mean, it's like if let's say if someone wanted Dungeon Land, I can't really do anything about it. I can't give it to them. It's kind of linked to my library and all these other things. But you know, if someone wanted it and I could give it to them, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. They just really fancy, really old, not really old games, but games that are no longer in service. And so it's like,
I
yeah,
mean, it was hella fun.
it
It's
was.
just dead. It has a lot of
It
bugs
died.
and it's
Yeah.
out of development. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and that happens. I've bought a couple of duds that I, in hindsight, really should have not bought in its state in early access,
Right.
and they just stopped making the game and ran off with the money. And it's like, well, that's my lesson for being an idiot. You know, got to do more research and all that stuff. But at the same time, with this, with reselling possibly on Robot Cache, I guess then with that being a possibility of being able to just resell your game, there wouldn't be a need to do any type of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a Steam sale, like any sales of the game.
It could be totally developer independent if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So I mean,
You might not even need to do that anymore, which
Right.
would be interesting.
yeah, I mean, because, well, again, and it's not like with this, you're not talking about a 1-for-1 trade. So like
Yeah,
you
of
as a
course.
consumer, you lose something.
You
in
were
the
going to
transaction.
lose
You don't,
some, but you were
you
still
don't-
going to make a little bit on something that you would not have been able to get anything for to begin with. You know, like for instance, in the
it
GameStop
would
case,
it would effectively, just to kind of frame it, it would effectively take the game, like the cost of a normal game, from $60 to 20 or 30 or whatever, the like it could cut it by as much as half, if not more, because if you ever wanted to, I could get that money back from the game. And so it's like, yeah, all right, that's pretty good.
and that's like
Mhm.
another thing. It's like the thing that ticks me off most about like GameStop is that I'll take in a game, it's $60 new, it's $55 used, and they'll buy it for like $8.
$12.
Yeah, like
Yep.
8 or 12. You know what I
Or
mean?
totally.
a quarter.
And I would rather like go on Craigslist and be like, hey, I got
Yeah.
this game. Someone comes and buys it for $15. I get more. I know
Right.
that there's not an insane upsale that GameStop's doing. So it's like, it's one of the, and it's, and GameStop's killing developers. So, if there was a new model like Robot Cash was doing, where you could resell a game, a little bit goes to the developer. And even if you were to buy it, quote unquote, new, then it's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh well, at least they're getting some and I'm getting some as well. And with blockchain and the permanent ledger, which is probably the biggest thing about it, is if you bought a game for full price at 60, you could have all of that information built into the blockchain. So when you resold it, the DLC and stuff like that may not go with it because it would know. You know what I mean? It would be part of that.
That's
so
true. Yeah.
you could buy games at a cheaper price, or you could spend the full 60 as if it was quote unquote new, and then have all of that DLC and extras as part of it.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, you'd be able to verify if someone bought it as the new price
Mhm.
or the used price, and like all of that is verifiable.
And then when you set up the smart contracts to work in that way, you don't do anything. It is built into the chain at that point. And so it'll take kind of like a lot of iterations and a lot of tweaking to get it to that point. But when you get it to that point, it is like that's it. Like you don't have to do anything. It is all taken care of. Which is nice.
That sounds really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
It's
know. I
pretty-
feel like,
crazy.
yeah, we've pretty much now covered everything we need to do for the blockchain because we only technically have 5 minutes left before we have to not watch The Bachelor anymore. So I guess we can, wrap it up.
Yeah,
You know?
it's one of those things that it's all speculation. None of us are. I mean, I've got
We're
some
not economists.
I've got some
with-
money tied into
No.
some cryptocurrency personally.
I
Marshall
kick
learned about
myself-
cryptocurrency today.
No, well, I remember exactly where I was when I first heard about cryptocurrency, about Bitcoin. I was talking to my dad and my brother, who were both bankers,
Mhm.
in a restaurant that I used to go to back in New York. And I was talking directly to my dad. And it pisses me off to this day. I'm like, that actually seems really interesting. I feel like that could be going somewhere. And, and I didn't do anything with it. I literally, like, I could have gone online, looked it up where to get Bitcoin, and I probably would have dropped $100 into Bitcoin. And to this day, I hate myself for it because I could have come out with like a cool couple million
Yeah.
because of
I
that.
mean, depending, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I
When I
also
would have sold
thought
it,
of, like,
and I would have sold it at the 20,000 mark when it hit. Like,
yeah, I thought Bitcoin was just completely a joke. Had no idea. I didn't really know much about it though. I just kind of heard like, oh yeah, Bitcoin, whatever, and people use it as a meme or a joke, and I didn't think about it until I started kind of looking into the what it is. You know, I actually got started looking into cryptocurrency with all of the inflation of prices from graphics cards.
Oh, right,
Actually,
with the
because
mining. Yeah.
you know the
oh yeah,
graphics cards that
the
people use
1080
to
is so
mine.
good
Yeah,
to mine for it that the
the
1080
prices have
price
gone
has
way
not
up.
gone down. It's gone up. It's like I want to
Yeah.
upgrade my car. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I got started looking into this and like, wait, this is a real thing. Holy crap, this is really,
I was
really
about to say
pretty
you didn't know about
cool.
the mining
Oh
shenanigans.
yeah.
No, no,
Like,
I
No,
mean,
oh,
I
it's
knew
definitely.
about I knew
yeah.
about mining, but I didn't really care about any of it until it was in something tangible to me, a new graphics card. You know, I'm looking for new graphics cards and wait, why is this one way more expensive than it should be? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that
Yeah.
just kind of got the train started for me
Yeah.
looking into it. And so yeah, it's really interesting. And like Wallace says, yes, the ability to resell Dark Souls plus the 1 inch of dust on top for
For
free.
free. I
Exactly.
I learned about Bitcoin a long time. So one of the reasons I didn't get into actually I tried mining Bitcoin a long time ago. But at that time, I mean now it's more so, but it cost more electricity at that time than for
Yeah,
me to like mine the coins that I would get. I mean, knowing it would.
Bummer.
So this was a long time ago, and so I tried doing that for a little while, but then when you guys, so there was a website on the dark web called the Silk Road, and it was a way to buy drugs. And it was
Yep.
what
Sounds about right.
Bitcoin was used for because it was totally anonymous, and so it was huge. I mean, it was huge on it was huge on the dark web and everything like that. The guy who started it posted his name, like his actual name, on a forum or something like that. Like that's how you get caught. You do just a dumb thing. So
Of course.
he was caught. The website was put down, and Bitcoin went from like being worth like $2,000 to like 8 cents. And one
Yeah.
website, I mean, it was. I'm kind of exaggerating
That
the
sounds about
numbers,
right. Yeah.
but it's like I'm also not exaggerating the numbers. In a day of this guy getting caught, the value of Bitcoin dropped so much that I was like, I gotta stay away from this. The fact that it's so volatile, and it
so
kind of
volatile.
Oh, it's super volatile.
and it
Yeah.
still is. I mean, 24 hours ago, Ethereum was worth $430, and right now it's worth $550, and that's in 24 hours. So it's like it just, I mean, it's such a gamble, but it's just like it. You can just see it like leveling itself out, and it's getting to
Right.
that point where it
Yeah.
will be an actual super viable thing.
No, it's absolutely true. Right now, like cryptocurrency, anything about that, right now it is actually gambling.
It
It is
is.
there,
Pretty
like,
much.
it is straight up gambling. You have no idea what the money that you're putting in is going to be worth. If you lose, win, there is no guarantee with any of this. It's a completely new and foreign type of economic situation, and so there's huge consequences and benefits, pros, cons, everything out there in the real world with actual money, being able to make a living, how day trading and all kinds of things like this, how all of this works, that is its own thing. But then there's, like we've talked about, all of these other interesting ways to think about how you could use this technology or this kind of system, this transparent and reliable platform for the registration and transfer of ownership without relying on third parties, how that can be used in the gaming industry, from in forms of buying and selling games, also in the ownership and trading of in-game assets, time spent in game for money, like all of these things heavily weigh in on in the gaming industry. And it's, the gaming industry is always one to take a new kind of technology and explore it and see how it can work and really like just use that as a jumping point. And I think that blockchain and these kinds of cryptocurrencies, I think that this is just another example of that, where it's going to change the scene pretty drastically, and I think it'll be pretty soon, which is exciting.
All right,
Yeah.
I think that's it.
I think it's
That's
good.
it.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it.
Yeah,
Hands up. We're done.
we're done.
Wrap
We're
it up.
done. Wallace, yeah, if we got paid in Bitcoin,
Oh my god.
would be amazing. Just yeah.
Yeah, the tip goes off on YouTube. You've been paid 1 Bitcoin.
Oh,
What?
there's no way.
What?
It's been not on this.
Right.
It's for sure not on this episode.
No, yeah.
No.
No.
This is the
no.
non-entertaining episode.
We got paid $20 last week, and we're like, oh, so you know.
we can't-
That was when we had something fun to talk about.
yeah.
This is
is
true.
This
This
time
is a-
was like
This is very
strictly
boring.
economic.
Yeah, this is, yeah,
But
totally.
it's so
yeah.
exciting.
It's so neat. It's just so boring. Wallace,
So neat.
again,
It's
man,
so
holy
boring.
crap! If we had a Bitcoin to give, it would be to you.
It would be
It
to
would be to
Wallace.
you.
Yes.
But yeah, that's it. I still don't know how to do the ending, so I'm just gonna tell Caleb to do it.
Okay, yeah, that's
go
our
to
show.
it.
So we're here at 7 p.m. Eastern every Monday, and it's usually the three of us. If not the three of us, you know, a smaller subset. Occasionally, we get Corey on here to show his beautiful, beautiful face.
I
We
miss him
do
so
we do
much.
live streaming. Marshall's pretty good about getting an early morning live stream.
I'll try and get one
that's-
tomorrow, by the way, if you can come join me. But I'll see what happens.
That's on Twitch. We do those. It's we are Random Respawn, and we occasionally use Twitter if you want to follow us there for our updates or random nuggets of memery. And yeah, that's it. I'm Calebite, and you've got Vajasha Raptor and Grand Marshal over there. Thanks you very much. Thank you very much for watching. Especially
very
our dearest friend Wallace.
Yeah.
Always great to see him in the chat. And Deco Dino, thank you for that. The chats earlier. It's been great, guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Take care.